Hey everybody, Clay Archer, CEO, DBC Technology, and I've got a really powerful one today. Today we're going to cover the brand new Enterprise Firewall Core. Ubiquiti is kind enough to send these out, and we're actually going to be putting these in the data center, and they are going to actually be client facing. So that's a really big step for us, and we're really excited. But today we're going to get these unboxed. We're going to get them on the test bench and fired up and adopted. We're going to go through the specs. We're going to compare those to the nearest competitors. We're also going to show the total cost of ownership versus the competition. We're going to go through our use case. We're going to show a diagram of how we are going to actually deploy this in the data center. And then we'll talk about where the slots in the Unifi lineup and whether you should use this in your deployments. So with that, let's go ahead and get this unboxed and talk about the physical unit. So as always, this comes in really nice Unifi packaging. In the packaging, you'll find the unit itself. You'll find an accessory kit with rack ears and mounting hardware. You'll also find 2 rack rails, and you'll find 2 power cords that go with the included dual hot swap power supplies. On the front, you'll find the typical Unifi touchscreen. You'll also find updating switching on the front of this unit, which definitely differentiates it from the EFG. So you get 2 gigabit Ethernet ports. You get 8 10 gigabit Ethernet ports, and one of those is the WAN port. You get 4 25 gigabit SFP28 ports, and one of those is a WAN port. And you get 4 100 gigabit QSFP28 ports, including 1 WAN port. So that's some incredible switching on the front of this unit. There's also a typical recessed reset button and an integrated 128 gigabyte SSD. Flipping around the back, you have 2 hot swappable 550 watt power supplies and 5 hot swappable fan modules. And those are the same hot swappable fan modules and hot swappable power supplies you will find in other Ubiquiti devices. So that's pretty cool. You could have a couple of those on standby in case you did have any failures. I will mention that that's a 550 watt power supply, which is larger than the EFG's 150 watt power supply. Same form factor, but they are not interchangeable there. You can go on store.ui.com and take a look at which power supplies are available and which units they go into. But it's cool to have that available, and you can buy them to have them on hand in case you wanted them. Also on the back, there is a gigabit management port and a console port. This is a pretty heavy device. I would recommend mounting it with the rack rails that are included in the packaging. We went ahead and got it racked up in our Jacksonville rack and got it adopted and staged. This is going to, as I said before, live in our data center in Atlanta, but we got it all staged up and ready to go. I'll play some B-roll here and I'll speed it up of that adoption process of the second unit and getting into high availability. They really have a neat process for it. The UI just kind of walks you through that process. And if you've done high availability on a UDM or UDM Pro or one of the other units, you'll be very familiar with this process. It's very quick and very easy and quite painless. And just a matter of minutes, you have this set up in high availability, which is really cool and really impressive. So I'm going to jump into the unit real quick. Like I said, this is just on our staging bench. We're waiting for this to go to final release, which is obviously happening today. And then we're going to package this up and we're actually going to put this in production at our data center in Atlanta. As I said in my EFG video, and I'll put a link to that video down below, it's very difficult to test these units in a lab environment. They really need to go into full production to even touch the kind of capacity that these units have. So to that end, there's not going to be a lot of fancy testing in this video, but this will be in live production. So if you ask me questions, I will answer those as I get that data. So if you have any throughput or real world questions, please leave them down below. And by the time you're seeing this video, this unit will be live in the data center and I can answer those questions with real live data. So let's dive into this a little bit. First thing I want to say, jumping into the interface and the software here, is that this is the same Unifi interface that all of our techs are used to seeing on all devices. So, I have a high-end enterprise grade firewall here that looks the same as a UCG fiber. And one of the things we do at DBC Technology is when people are onboarded, all of our technicians are issued a Unifi firewall for their house. So every one of our technicians actually uses a Unifi firewall at home where they're able to play and explore and understand the firewall. And I feel like this is a real superpower for managed service providers that Unifi has delivered here with this UI, is that, once you're used to the interface, high availability is where high availability is. Networks are where networks are. Internets or VPN, all that stuff. If you've played with it at home, there's not going to be any super surprises here. Obviously, each device has more or less depending on the hardware that's delivered with the device. But I do really feel like that of all things is the superpower of this unit. You have this 100 gigabit per second device that's really super high end, and people will be very familiar with it just walking in the door. And that wasn't the same for us when we were a SonicWall shop. The higher you went up in those firewalls, even the more cryptic it got. And at the base level, they were very very cryptic and hard to understand for the average technician. Not that necessarily you want your level 1 techs being in, EF Core, doing stuff, but as they move up the ranks in your organization, that familiarity is super useful. And the single most expensive thing that we have as managed service providers is our labor, and the ability to train somebody or have somebody be able to pick up something quicker really saves time and really saves money. And really the tail of this unit is going to be the high availability, the ease of setup, and the incredible specs that it has. So I'm going to jump right in and read the press release from Unifi. Introducing the all-new Enterprise Firewall Core. With 24 nanoverse N2 cores, it delivers extraordinary scale for sessions, throughput, and security. Run SSL inspection license-free at 40 gigabits per second. Defend against threats with daily signature updates from Proofpoint, and enforce granular web filtering powered by Cloudflare. With a high-density interface across 3 speed tiers, including 100 gigabit, you can enforce segmentation at every layer of your network. Deploy high availability in minutes with shadow mode, then extend resiliency downstream with multi-chassis link aggregation and switch stacking. And with Site Manager, unify your entire organization through a single platform for SD-WAN orchestration and intra-bound identity-aware policy enforcement across every user and site. Completely license-free. That's really powerful stuff, and the fact that it's license-free is mind-boggling, and we're just about to get into that total cost of ownership comparison, which was just going to blow your mind. So it's an enterprise class, 100 gigabit per second cloud gateway delivering 75 gigabit per second IDS IPS throughput with 22,500 plus client capacity and 5,000 plus concurrent IPsec tunnels. The EF Core is going to be $34.99. Those numbers are just crazy. So let's just jump into the spreadsheet that I created to compare this unit to other units that are available in the market. First of all, I wanted to put the EF Core against the EFG, and you can see here its numbers are quite impressive just against its little brother. You're going from 23.5 gigabit per second to 100 gigabit per second, but you can see with IPS, IDS, or with inspection turned on, it really just jumps up to a whole nother ballpark. It's just crazy how fast this firewall is when you hit it with a task. The concurrent sessions go from 1 million to 10.5 million. The max users are 4.5 times as much. The site-to-site VPN tunnels are order of magnitude more in number. The interface can go 4 times as fast and includes so much more switching, and all that for only $1,500 more than the EFG. That's an incredible value just against its little brother, but when you start to compare it with the competition is where it just gets crazy. And there are not a lot of firewalls that are offering this kind of throughput. So we had to go all the way up to a SonicWall NSSP 13700, a Sophos XGS 8500, a FortiGate 3700F. And Meraki didn't even have anything in this class. We had to go down to a MX450, which is not even in the same kind of ballpark. But you can see at these numbers, these are pretty impressive devices. And then you come down to pricing, and some of these units are over 10 times as much as the EF Core, which is just crazy. And that's not even the expensive part. They all require licensing. So I had Claude just do a quick side-by-side comparison of the total cost of ownership of these devices. Obviously, I've used AI to do this comparison, so double check any figures you see here. Obviously, these aren't retail type devices, and your deals through distribution may be way different than the stated prices on these devices. But this is just a good baseline comparison. And you can see just right off the bat for the Ubiquiti products, if you don't opt to pay for the optional licensing for CyberSecure, your total cost of ownership is $34.99 for 5 years for this device. And for the EFG, it's $19.99. But if you do opt in for the CyberSecure, which I would highly recommend that you do, the total cost of ownership for 5 years for the EF Core is $59.94. And for the EFG, it's $44.94. So you can see there's only a $1,500 difference between that two for that whole 5-year cost of ownership. And when you divide that in, it's $300 a year or $25 a month. It's really not that big of a deal from that 5 years on a monthly basis to go from the EFG to the EF Core, which I think, might make sense for a lot of people. You're getting a ton more headroom there for not that much more monthly. $30 a month is not that big of a deal when we're talking about these kind of devices. And you go, well, $30 a month is $30 a month. But when you start to compare it to the competition, you start to go, well, the total cost of ownership on the high end for the SonicWall was $146,000. On the low end was $90,000. So even if you take these low end cost of ownerships, it's just in a different ball game. It's in a different league. Now, obviously, these are old, storied brands, and they have a lot of testing and a lot of legacy behind them, and there's a lot of confidence in having that. But I think what you've seen from Ubiquiti over the past few years, and certainly what we've seen with the EFG, which is running our internal rack at the data center, has been nothing but positive. But there's just such a difference in this total cost of ownership. It really is quite incredible. And I went on just to add what's included with the EF Core and the EFG for that matter. And it's just so much that you're getting license free with these devices. It's a really, really compelling situation for most MSPs in my situation. If you're going to market with this, you can sell somebody such a superior device with so much more headroom that really future-proofs you for the foreseeable future. So I'm going to jump in real quick and give you a rough diagram of our 2 racks that we have in the data center and how we are using the EFG and are going to use the EF Core. So right now we have rack number 1 is already built out at the data center, and it has the 2 EFGs in high availability. It's got the campus AG switches, and we've got some switching below there going into a bunch of legacy devices. What's awesome about this is we are slowly but surely upgrading these legacy devices. And as we do, we're able to use the high availability and the speed of the AG switches to have kind of 2 worlds where we have our older legacy stuff in 1 and 10 gigabit Ethernet, and our newer stuff going into the 25 gigabit. We're also using the AG switch to connect some of the infrastructure in one rack to the infrastructure in the other, which has been really nice. Now, the 2 EF cores are actually going in high availability in our customer-facing part of our infrastructure. And that infrastructure is older in legacy as well. So we're rolling in that new infrastructure so that we're able to bring our older infrastructure up to date slowly as we roll in that new infrastructure. So right now, most of that infrastructure is on 1 gig and 10 gig Ethernet. As we roll new stuff in there, we're going to be able to easily update that to newer, higher speed stuff that's going to be able to utilize the throughput of the EF core. So let's wrap this up. Who is this device for? I think any MSP in the SMB space needs to seriously be looking at the EFG and the EF core as part of their lineup. Right now, we kind of are tiering it this way. For the smaller SMBs, we are going to be putting in the UDM Beast. For people that are stepping up a level, we're putting in that EFG. But we may change our tune there. So if you're looking out 5 years in some of these organizations and you go, how much of their infrastructure are they going to switch to 10 gig? How much of their infrastructure are they going to switch to 25 gig? And what's their availability of connectivity in their current location? For us, we're a big distributed organization now. So we have multiple locations. We have data in the data center. So right now we're using UDM Beast at our Jacksonville location. We're using UDM Pro Maxes at our other locations to connect back to EFGs and EFG cores in the data center. And that gives us a ton of headroom. And looking out 5 years, running a device like the EF Core, really the sky's the limit for us as far as connectivity in the data center and connectivity from our remote locations into that data center. So if your client's infrastructure looks like that and you're going to put in an EFG, well, the EFG Core may make more sense now. You're looking at roughly $30 a month if you amortize that out, or $1,500 straight up difference in price. And now you have a device that really is going to future-proof them and not need to be replaced for that 5 years and scales with that business. So it may make sense for a lot of MSPs to at least take a look at this. But what do you think? I'd love to hear your comments. Please put them down below. If you're looking at getting an EF Core, I am going to have an affiliate link down below. It does help out the channel if you use those links. And if you're looking for a managed service provider in the Southeast United States, please reach out to us at dpctechnology.com, and we'd love to have that conversation. As always, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next video.